So wow, I am very surprised and impressed. The story's been so fun and so unique, and I don't think I've ever read anything like this book. Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing a very exciting reading vlog. Because in this vlog, I'm going to be reading some fantasy books that are outside of my comfort zone. Because if you know anything about me as a reader, then you know that I just don't really read fantasy books. It's really never been the genre for me. You know, like I've been a reader for 10 plus years here on YouTube now, and for as long as I've been on YouTube, I have stuck with the genres that I love and know best. And like my three main genres of choice these days, it's romance books, horror books, and thriller mystery books. And like those are my comfort genres, like those are my go-tos. And I'm just not a big fantasy reader. And in fact, in the last like 10 years, I've probably only read a handful of fantasy books. I actually tried to make a video like this back in 2019 where I was trying to read some popular fantasy books. So I can have that video linked down below. It's a little older though. I would say that video was like a complete fail because I had so many DNFs in that video. So because it didn't go very well the last time I tried to do this, I'm gonna keep my expectations very low. But in today's video, I'm gonna be reading 3 fantasy books. And these are all books that I genuinely feel drawn to. Like these are books that I feel like I could actually have a shot at enjoying. And it also came down to like what I was able to get my hands on availability wise, because I don't own all of these books, and I also wanted to have the audiobook because I rely so much on audiobooks these days to help me read books, and especially for a genre that I'm not really that familiar with, I wanted to have the audiobook for each one of these books as well. So it really just came down to what I was able to get my hands on. So the first book that I'm going to be reading for this video is going to be the book Quicksilver, and this is one that I chose because it is available to read on Kindle Unlimited, and I also decided to listen to this one on audio on Spotify. And this is one that I've been very curious about. I feel like I was getting some FOMO with this book at the end of last year because this was nominated in the romantasy category at the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it just seemed like so many of my friends were raving about this book, and I was like, maybe it could be my thing. I mean, I don't really know anything about this. All I know is that it's nearly 700 pages, and I decided to give this one a go just because I was feeling some FOMO. Like I was afraid I was missing out, and I was seeing a lot of good praise for it. So I decided that we're gonna give this one a shot in this video. Another book that I'm gonna be reading for this video is gonna be Dungeon Crawler Carl. And this is one that I've been really excited to read because a lot of my friends have really been hyping this one up too as well, especially my friend Gavin. He recently read it, and he was like the main reason that I was like so intrigued to read this one. And this is a book that was recently sent to me from the publisher, so like thank you to Random House for sending me a copy. I also decided to download the audiobook from Audible for this one because unfortunately the audiobook is only available from Audible, and like I hate when they do that, but I decided to download the audiobook anyways because so many people have told me that the audiobook for this is incredible and that it's definitely worth having that experience. This is another one that like plot-wise, I have no idea what's going on. I think there's like an apocalypse, and then it's like this character gets put into a world that's like video game-like. So I'm excited to read this one and give it a shot. And then the third book that we're gonna be reading in today's video is gonna be Our Infinite Fates. And this is another one that like I think it can be considered romantasy. This is one that I was able to get as an ebook from my library, so I was able to download it as an ebook, and then I also did have the audiobook from the publisher. And this is one that I've been really excited to read actually because this book has been getting compared to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I do think that this one is actually young adult though. The premise for this one sounds really unique and interesting because you're following this girl who falls in love with this character named Arden in like every single timeline, and they keep getting reborn again and again, and every time before their 18th birthday they have to kill each other. And you don't really know like why this is happening, but every single time before they reach their 18th birthday they have to kill each other. And so you're following these characters who have lived for like 1,000 years, and it's like a love story between them, I think. And that premise already, like it does sound pretty similar to Addie LaRue, so like I am so excited because The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is like one of my top favorite books of all time. So for any book to even compare itself to that one, like I've got to check it out, right? I mean, you know, hey, if this vlog ends up going well, then I do have a handful of other books that I was considering reading for this video that I might try to read in the future. I know the book Phantasma was definitely one of my top options for this, but I wasn't able to get my library hold for the audiobook in on time for this video, but this is one that I'm thinking about for the future. Also, same with The Will of the Many. That one's another one that the audiobook is only available through Audible, so that's why I was hesitant. I was like either this one or Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I ended up going with that one. But maybe The Will of the Many is one that I might consider for a future video. You'll have to let me know if there are any fantasy books in particular that you would really like to see my reaction to, because I'm open to any any ideas that you might have. But before we do jump into the reading vlog, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's video sponsor, which is Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a book subscription service that I've been using for years, and I've discovered so many of my new favorite books of all time because of Book of the Month. Basically how it works is every single month they have a selection of 5 or even up to 7 different books to choose from. Most of the time they have new releases before they even come out, and they really do have a wide variety of genres to pick from every single time. Like, there really is something for everyone. I genuinely get so excited to see which books Book of the Month are going to be offering for their monthly selections, because I feel like most of the time they have some of my most anticipated books of the year as monthly selections, but then just as often I'm always finding books that I've never heard of that end up becoming new favorites too. And so I love utilizing Book of the Month to discover new books. I also love that Book of the Month is risk-free, because if for some reason none of the books are catching your eye that month, then you can just skip that month and you will not be charged. And each book is covered by their reader's guarantee. So if a member ends up purchasing a book that they don't like, then Book of the Month will replace it for free in your next box. This month I ended up choosing 2 different books, one of them being this one called Passion Project, and this one is a romance that takes place in New York City. Like, is this cover not giving all of the vibes? Like, I am so excited. This looks like summer to me. And then I also decided to check out Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. And this one is another one that's like, it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, you know, it leans more fantasy. But this year I'm really trying to push myself outside of my comfort zone, and so I love that Book of the Month has some selections so that I can do that. I love that with Book of the Month, your reading is always rewarded with their loyalty program, and the savings start after only 3 boxes. Plus, Book of the Month has the best prices for new hardcover fiction books, because if you walk into any bookstore right now to find these new hardcover release books, they're probably going to be anywhere from like $27 even up to $30. But this month, when you use the sign-up code DIAMOND, you can get your first book for just $5, as well as getting a free hat, which is so cool. I absolutely adore the hats that I've received from Book of the Month. They're so well made and they're so cute. You can use the link down in my description, and for a limited time, take advantage of that code. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into the reading vlog. Hey, hello, I have started reading Quicksilver. I wanted to update you because I'm now 162 pages in. I'm about 25% of the way through the book, and I am currently reading this on Kindle Unlimited, but I also am listening to the audiobook on Spotify because the audiobook was available there, and I just wanted the help of the audiobook to like push me through, you know, because fantasy is not my typical genre and I feel like I needed the help. But actually this book has been pretty easy to grasp and understand for me. I'm kind of worried though, because this audiobook on Spotify is like 20 hours long, and you know, with Spotify you only get 15 hours of audiobook listening per month. So like, I don't know what's gonna happen once I hit my 15-hour limit. Like, is it just gonna like stop? And I guess I'm just gonna have to physically read the last, you know, like 5 hours of this, I guess. But so far this is actually going pretty well. I am already really liking, you know, the introduction into this universe. I feel like sometimes when I start fantasy books, I just like immediately get lost with like all of the language that I don't understand. And especially if it's like not taking place on our planet, then I just get very confused and I get overwhelmed by all of the world building. And in this story, we're following this protagonist named Saris, and the story really kicks off when she like steals this gauntlet, and then there's all these guards and guardians like chasing her. We immediately get introduced to her younger brother named Hayden, and you know, her brother tries to take the fall for this because it is a really big crime what she did, but she's not gonna let him, and so she wants to protect her brother. But in this place where they live, it's so wild. She has a lot of really intense restrictions, especially when it comes to water. Like, she said all of the people living there are only allowed 6 ounces of water per day, and the water doesn't come from the tap. Like, it's not very clean water. I thought the introduction of this character, Queen Madra, was like really interesting. Like, it was very easy to visualize everything in my head, which I really liked. And then our main character gets introduced into the world of fae and alchemy. I don't know, to be honest, if I've ever read a book that involves fae before. And it's kind of cool because our main character, she's kind of like, oh my god, like I thought fae only existed in like myths and fairy tales, and like she didn't know that this was like a real thing. And so we kind of get to experience it as our main character is like learning about it, which I do think is kind of cool, and it kind of helps me understand the whole thing with the fae a lot better because our main character doesn't know anything either. And shortly after she discovers the fae, she meets this character named Death. I mean, his name is actually Kingfisher, but like he is Death I don't know what that means, but that's what they say. And so now after getting taken in by the Fae, she's starting to learn about them and their world. But it's interesting, you know, because she's like seeing snow for the first time and she's like seeing all of this water everywhere and she's like, this is so weird. Like it's completely different than what she knows. And so I'm really liking that she's getting exposed to like so many new things. I'm also learning a lot about like the alchemy at this point and like the different levels of magic, which is also very interesting. I'm taking some notes on my phone so that I don't get confused with like all of the language that I'm learning. I'm trying to understand it. But I'm liking the story of this guy Kingfisher so far, and something that I am loving about the audiobook is that the audiobook is so well done because you not only get the dual narrators, but like anytime there's dialogue from him, even in her chapters, it's narrated by the guy. So like you don't have to worry about the awkwardness of like a female narrator narrating the male parts or vice versa, because anytime each other has dialogue, it's narrated by the actual person, which I think is so cool and so nice. When they put in that extra effort on the audiobook, I think it goes a long way and it sounds great. There was a little like, I don't know if it would be considered a plot twist, but there was like a thing revealed in the plot about Kingfisher's character about like 100 to 120 pages in that I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely saw that coming. Like that was super obvious. It was about his connection to like one of the other characters, but I did really like that. And I think it's making the story even more interesting and adding more layers. I mean, this main character, Saris, she's definitely giving like the chosen one kind of vibes, you know, because like in typical fantasy that I have read, I know plenty about that where it's like Divergent or like the Hunger Games where like she's the only one who has the power to like make a difference. And like she is the only one who has this ability to do something. So it's definitely giving like the chosen one just a little bit, but I am liking the writing a lot so far. I'm finding it really easy to get into, really easy to understand. And I am also liking the setup of this romance because I think the main romance in this book is between Saris and this guy Kingfisher who's like death. They've only had a few, you know, like scenes together so far, but I'm already really liking the tension between them. And so I'm curious to see where that's gonna go. And I'm hoping that the romance will really be the thing that like makes me obsessed with this, which is why I wanted to start with this one. So I'm gonna continue reading and I will keep you updated with my thoughts as I go. I thought now would be a good time to check in because I am now 360 pages into Quicksilver, and according to the audiobook and the ebook, I'm about 54% of the way through. So I am past the halfway point, which like I'm so proud of myself because, you know, this is not really usually my kind of book, and I am like pretty aware of that while I'm reading it. And I don't know why some parts of this book are reminding me a little bit of Fourth Wing, and I don't know if it's because of like the characters and like the way that they talk to each other. Like their banter definitely reminds me of the characters from Fourth Wing, but I think I'm liking the romance in this book a lot more because I didn't really like the romance very much in Fourth Wing. Like I feel like these characters feel a bit more mature. I mean, I know Fourth Wing was like young adult, right? So it makes sense because this one is not young adult. This is an adult romance. It's also so funny to me though because I'm wondering, like, do they say gods in every fantasy romance book? Like, is that like a normal thing? Because instead of saying like, oh my god, or something like that, they'll just say gods. And I noticed that in Fourth Wing too. Like, I don't know if that's like a common thing in fantasy books for them to say gods instead of one god because they probably have more gods than we do. I don't know. I just think it's funny. I'm kind of liking how much of a slow burn this book is. I mean, don't get me wrong, with the romance between these two, like there's almost like this instant lust between them. And like they do have a lot of tension. There's a lot of sexual tension between these two. But even at the 50% mark of the way through this book, like nothing much has really happened between them. And I'm kind of loving that because I am liking the slow burn of like these two characters. Like you're just waiting for them to actually get together. And I do prefer that because I don't like when the characters like get together right away because then it's so boring. I also like how there's not necessarily a love triangle situation. Like there's not really, but there is this guy named Carrion from her past that like he just keeps popping up, and like it's really funny to see how Fisher reacts to this guy Carrion. I think it's actually kind of hilarious. Like the way that he talks to him is just so funny. I thought most of the fantasy in this book would like go way over my head, but to be honest, I feel like I'm having a good grasp of like what's going on. There were some really intense like action scenes and like a few little plot twists here and there that I didn't see coming. I really am having a fun time with this book. I'm really liking learning more about like the Quicksilver and like what that means. And I like learning more about the alchemy and the magic and like what she's able to do. It's interesting to learn about his history too and like how long he's been alive. I also do like the way that the romance is written in this book. Like I like the way that she describes him. I think it's like very sweet. I don't know, I loved the quote when she said, "It was hard not to look at him and ache. I had grown up in a pit of misery where people died more often than they lived. I hadn't seen many beautiful things in my short life, but of all the beautiful things I had seen, Fisher was the most beautiful of all. And I love how she describes him. Fisher was the epitome of everything that was strong and male and powerful. He was so much more than anything I'd experienced before. He was beautiful. Looking at him made me feel like I couldn't catch my breath. Like, the romance is just, I don't know, I like the way that was written. I thought it was so cute. And I also like that in this book, I don't think this is a spoiler, but maybe it's like a mild spoiler. I don't really know what's considered a spoiler for this, to be honest, but I like that he's kind of able to like compel her in a way. I don't know, they did this thing where there was like a blood oath where like he gave her his word that he would do something, so then she gave the word that she would also follow through. And since they've shared a blood oath or something, he's able to like compel her to do certain things to like keep her safe. But I don't know, I have liked the very few moments where they talk about the compulsion or like what he's compelled her to do, and she's like, when she realizes that she's been compelled. I just think it's kind of funny. Like, I do like their banter. I think they have cute banter with each other. And over halfway through the book, I am invested. Like, I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm still listening to this one on Spotify, by the way. And on the audiobook, I have a little bit less than 10 hours left, but like my freaking Spotify hours are gonna run out in like the next 4 to 5 hours of listening. It's probably gonna be close to like 100 pages that I'll just have to read on the ebook afterwards, but you know what? It's fine. I'm gonna try to listen to more of this audiobook before bed tonight. Hello, it's the next morning and I wanted to update you because last night I was able to read quite a bit more of Quicksilver. I actually got up to page 516, so I'm now 77% of the way through it. And as I was listening to it last night, Spotify literally cut me off. They cut me off around page 470. Just gonna read the rest of this on my Kindle with my eyeballs. And I'm actually really starting to like this book. I don't know, there was a point around like the 400 page mark where like something kind of changed in the plot, or like something kind of changed between how the characters are treating each other, and I'm liking it so much more now. It's kind of funny because the last time that I updated you, I was like, oh my god, like this is such a slow burn and like nothing has even happened between them yet. And then almost immediately after I had updated you, like there was a sex scene. And I'm not gonna lie, the first sex scene between them, like, oh my god, it felt a little bit cringy to me. I'm not gonna lie, like the dirty talk was just not my favorite. Like it was a little bit cringe. Oh my gosh, like after around 400 pages in, there's like some things happening in the plot that I just think are so interesting, and it's definitely more with like what I like in romance. So I'm kind of having fun with it now. Like it's a little bit more fun than it was for me before. I know that I can't get too specific because of like spoilery things, but let's just say like there's something cool with the tattoos that keeps happening to her character that I really like. I think that that's very cool and very entertaining. And now about 500 pages in, it feels like the action of the book is definitely reaching a climax right here, because there's things happening that I'm like, oh shit. And like the creatures that they are fighting against, I did not think that those particular creatures were going to be in this book, so I'm like, oh shit, that's even more interesting to me. If you know, you know. I just don't want to spoil anything. Like, I don't know what could be considered a spoiler for this, so I'm going to be super vague. I love learning more about Kingfisher's character from like all of the other people in this world. I love how she keeps having conversations with them, and then you find out this information about him that just makes you like, ah! And that's my favorite kind of male love interest. Like, I love a male love interest who seems like really rough around the edges, or like he's been through some hard things, but he's actually such a genuinely good person, sweetheart on the inside. You know, like that's kind of my favorite male love interest. And this guy is starting to lean in that direction, and I just like, oh, I understand, you know, like I'm starting to understand the hype with this book. I get it. So anyway, I decided to come down to the park today so that I could finish reading this, because I mean, at this point I'm on page 516. This book is about 670 pages, so I don't think it would take me too long to read the last, you know, 150-ish pages of this book. And I wanted to come down to the park because today it is literally 60 degrees outside today. It is the warmest day that I've seen in Washington probably since like last summer. I don't know what happened, but it's finally starting to feel like spring. It actually feels so nice out today. And I wanted to get out today specifically because today is like the only day that the weather is showing that it's going to be this nice. Because for the rest of this week, it looks like it's going to be raining again and it's going to get really cold again. So I really wanted to take advantage of the one day that we have nice weather here. I also brought a new Alani flavor from the house. I got this one recently that's called Blue Slush, and I haven't tried this flavor yet. So far, the only Alani flavors that I've tried have been the Juicy Peach, and then I also tried the Pink Slush recently, and I really did like the Pink Slush and the Baby Peach. I don't know, I think the Baby Peach has been my favorite so far, but I'm really excited to try this one, and I thought I would try it with you before I go outside. What is the Blue Slush? What is the flavor gonna taste like? What do we think? Ooh. Oh, I actually really like the flavor on this a lot. I don't know if it's like blueberry or like what the flavor is, but it's delightful. So I was talking about this on reading sprints the other day, but these Alanis kind of like scare the shit out of me because they're 200 milligrams of caffeine. And I'm so not used to having that much caffeine because usually when I drink coffee, you know, like when I make coffee at home, I'm only making a coffee with like 1 or maybe 2 shots of espresso at most. Like that's all I can do, you know, like with my GERD. And then, you know, I'm used to drinking like Sprite, you know, like Sprite is my go-to drink every single night for dinner, but like Sprite doesn't have caffeine. So like these 200 milligrams of caffeine, like this shit will take me out. Like I start to feel so buzzy after I drink these because I'm not used to drinking this much caffeine, but it definitely gives me an energy boost and I really like the flavor on these Alanis. Maybe I just need to start shopping for the like mini sizes of Alani because I like the flavor on these so much, but 200 milligrams of caffeine is a lot of caffeine for me. But anyways, let's go sit in the park together and let's finish reading Quicksilver. I'm so excited. Hi, it is a few hours later. It's now 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I wanted to update you because I just finished reading Quicksilver. Those last like 150 pages really flew by. Like there was a lot of action at the end of this book, and I was kind of worried because part of me thought like maybe I'm not going to care that much about the action or I'm going to find the story to be a little bit hard to follow, but like that was not the case. I was actually really invested in the action in the last like 100 pages, and there were some really fun reveals in this book that I did not see coming. You know, I think something that's really great about reading a genre that I don't typically read is that like I don't really have any idea like how to predict where the storyline could be going, because since I don't read this genre very often, like I don't know what the common tropes are in fantasy, or you know, like I don't know what a typical twist looks like in a fantasy book. And so I was just like along for the ride, having a great time. There were so many little reveals that I didn't see coming, and like the cliffhanger kind of that this book ends on, I was like, what? It did immediately make me interested in continuing with the series. Like I'm really curious to see where the story goes. I'm really liking the characters. I actually ended up really enjoying this one. Like I thought the romance was so cute and it was so wholesome actually, and it was really well written. There was this one line that I literally had to write this down in my notes because I was like, oh my gosh, like that is romance to me. When she says to him, make me forget that I've ever suffered, make me forget that I will again. Oh, I loved that. And I feel like, you know, not only were like Saris and then Kingfisher, like they were really interesting characters, but then I feel like all of the side characters were also very interesting. Like I loved the story with like Kingfisher's sister, but I also loved the story about like Saris and like her whole family and like what ended up happening to her parents. I also really liked Carrion actually as a side character. I thought he was like really funny and really charming, and like I don't know, I just loved all of his moments in this book too. Even some of the villainous characters I thought were very interesting, because sometimes I feel like villain characters can be written in a way where like, oh my god, they're so cheesy and like eye roll, but I actually really liked the villainous characters and I feel like their motives were like very intriguing to me. I did not expect to be so like invested in this world. You know, at the start of reading this book, I just really couldn't tell if this was going to be like my kind of book or not. And even after being around like 300 pages into the book, I was like, yeah, you know, like this is kind of what I expect from like a fantasy romance book. Like it had all of the elements and I just didn't know if I cared enough about what I was reading. Then something really changed for me. After about 400 pages in, I got so much more invested in the plot and the characters. And by the ending, I was like, oh wow, like I really understand the hype with this because it's just so well written. It's so engaging. It's so entertaining. I feel like this has got to be like one of the best in like the romance fantasy genre. I mean, granted, I don't know, you know, because like I don't read this genre. I don't know, but like this one has such high reviews on Goodreads. And like the only book that I can think to compare this to is Fourth Wing, because Fourth Wing is one of the only romance fantasy books that I've ever read. But I really liked a lot of the fantasy elements in this story. This one's more like magic heavy. I think I'm probably going to give this book 4 stars. I don't think it was like a perfect 5 stars for me, especially because it took me so long to really get invested in the story. But I definitely liked this one a lot more than Fourth Wing, which I feel like says a lot, you know, because I feel like Fourth Wing is probably a lot more popular than this one, but I feel like this one felt more adult to me. This one definitely had more adult themes and it felt a little bit more mature. There was more like graphic sex and there was a little bit more graphic violence too. There's just something about this. It really worked for me, especially in the end. I feel like between the 400 page mark all the way through the end, like that was some really entertaining shit for me and I really enjoyed myself. So wow, I am very very surprised and impressed. I do think I want to continue in the series at some point. I don't know if the sequel's already out or not. I'll have to look into it. And I think tomorrow I want to start on Dungeon Crawler Carl. I think that would be a fun one. Something a bit more lighthearted and fun after this read, especially because this book was like nearly 700 pages. So like I want something a little bit shorter next. So I think that's what we're gonna do. Hello, it is now the next afternoon, but I wanted to update you because I have started reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. This morning I got the chance to go and get lunch with my dad, and like of course in typical Washington fashion, you know, yesterday was actually a really nice day out. It was like 60 degrees, it was sunny, it was so nice. And then today it's pouring rain. We're expected to get hail tonight. There might be thunderstorms, and there's like tornado warnings in the Seattle area. Like what is going on? I don't know. I think it's because we had like such a weirdly hot day, or like warm day in the middle of a week where it's been like raining a lot. So I think something's going on in the air tonight. I don't know, but we're expected to get some crazy weather tonight. But I have started reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm now 162 pages in. I just hit chapter 21, and I am glad that I'm listening to this one on audio because y'all were right. The audiobook for this is amazing. Like it's so hilarious. And in this story, this one is definitely turning out to be a little bit more fantasy than I thought it was going to be, because for some reason I thought this was going to lean more into like sci-fi than fantasy, but it definitely does feel like a good mix of like fantasy and sci-fi. And in this story, I think at the beginning I was a little bit confused and overwhelmed, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, what am I even reading? I think you might be a little bit like overwhelmed and confused in those first few chapters, but I think it's better if you just kind of lean into the confusion a little bit until you get a grasp on the story and like what's going on. I think in those first like 4 or 5 chapters, there was so much info dumping that I was like, whoa, I was like trying to keep up on all the things that it was talking about. Because in this story, we're following this guy named Carl, and right at the start of this book, he has this breakup with his girlfriend, and he's like sitting in his apartment, and he has her cat in the apartment when the world ends. Like it's literally the apocalypse. And then shortly after the end of the world, he finds himself on this intergalactic game show. And it's so funny because he gets put in the game show with the cat that's like not even his own cat. The cat's name is Donut, and like, oh my god, dude, this cat is like one of the best characters in the book for sure. And so something that's really cool about this book is it almost reads like you're in a video game. It says they try to survive the end of the world or just get to the next level in a video game like trap-filled fantasy dungeon, a dungeon that's actually the set of a reality television show with countless viewers across the galaxies. And so they just get placed onto this like reality show that's kind of like a video game. I don't know why, in some ways this kind of reminds me of like Ready Player One, but also probably because that's the only thing I can think to compare it to that I've read that also has like a video game vibe to it. But this story's been so fun and so unique, and I don't think I've ever read anything like this book. Plot-wise, I'm not gonna lie, I would find it pretty hard to like explain to you what's even happening in this book because I'm not totally sure, but it's so fun the way that this story's told. And I love how like an announcer will come over the speakers and like talk to all of the crawlers, as they call them. Like most of the people that join the game, they're called crawlers, and like there's not just people that are joining the game, there's also like animals, there's goblins, there's like monsters, like there's all kinds of different, you know, species. I also love the fact that this book takes place in Seattle, or like right at the start of this, the character's talking about living in Seattle, so I thought that that's really cool. And I also noticed that the author lives in Washington, so like that's very cool. But like, oh my gosh, dude, there was already 3 different parts that made me laugh out loud. Like this book is absolutely hilarious, and I'm especially loving the audiobook. Like the way that this narrator is delivering some of these lines, it is so funny. And like I rarely ever have the experience of like laughing out loud from a book. Like that rarely ever happens to me in general, but especially like there was one part, it involved a toe ring. I think if you know, you know, know, but I was literally like laughing for a while. Like just imagining the situation, I was laughing so hard. And this character Carl and like the banter that he has with this cat, it's just so freaking funny. Like it's so entertaining. I love this cat character Donut. Like what a freaking icon, legend. I feel like certain aspects of this video game and like this world are definitely like going over my head a little bit, and that's why I like that I have the help of the audiobook to kind of get through sections that I don't fully know what's going on, but I'm having so much fun with it that I don't even care. And I feel like this is one of those books that you can enjoy even without fully understanding everything that you're reading, because I feel like there's a lot of different like rules and things that you're having to remember about this world that I don't remember all the details specifically, but it's still so much fun. I can see myself rating this one pretty high. Like it's kind of feeling like it could be a 5-star right now. I've been annotating this one already quite a bit, and I made a certain color tab for things about the world that I want to come back to. Like anytime they were kind of info dumping about something, I was like, oh, maybe I should put a tab here so I can come back to this if I need to. But then I also put a certain tab color for like the funny moments, and there have been so many funny moments. I even had to add a specific tab color for like funny moments with the cat specifically. So like that's been really great. I'm having a really fun time with this so far, like even more fun than I thought I would have. This shit is so entertaining. Like I can definitely see why this is so popular right now. And anyways, I'm going to continue reading this a little bit tonight. I know that my dad said that he wants to make dinner for us tonight. He wants to make some kind of like chicken and corn bowl, like something that he's really into right now. And then I'm probably going to be watching more of the Vampire Diaries with my mom tonight, because we've started season 3 at this point. We watched 7 episodes of season 3 just last night. So we're like really getting into season 3 right now, and it's been so much fun. And I'll probably have enough time to maybe finish this book up tomorrow, because I do have some Patreon reading sprints tomorrow. So hopefully the rest of this book is just as fun, because I'm having a great time with it and I can't wait to see where the story goes. Several hours later, but I wanted to update you because I just finished reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I was doing some reading sprints earlier today on Patreon, and I was able to get through most of the book on my reading sprints. I ended up really liking this book a lot. I definitely see why people said to go the audiobook route, because the audiobook for this was so good. Especially like at the end of the audiobook, I loved how they did the end credits. I thought that was so fun and so creative. I am just so impressed with this book. You know, I was talking about this on reading sprints today, but like I don't know if it's because I don't typically read fantasy books like this one, but I genuinely feel like this has got to be one of the most creative and like unique books that I've ever read. But I do think that that is a common thing that people are saying about this book in this series, is that it's just so different and so refreshing. You know, as someone who's been on booktube for like 10 years and I read hundreds of books a year at this point, it is so refreshing to say that this is a book that is so unique. I've never read anything quite like this, and I can't say that about a lot of books. I just loved it so much. Like I loved the characters. I loved Carl, but then I especially loved Princess Donut. Oh my god, what an icon of a character. The cat in this book is amazing. I think I want to give this book 4 stars though instead of 5 stars, and the main reason for that is because in the middle section of this book, I definitely feel like there's a point where it starts to feel a little bit repetitive just in terms of like what's happening in the plot. Like I was kind of waiting for things to pick up a little bit, and I do think there's a point where it was starting to drag for me just a little bit with like the repetitive nature of, you know, like you're just reading about this character trying to survive in this world, and there's like different kinds of challenges that he faces, but they were just all starting to feel a little bit repetitive for me at a time. But some of the challenges just started to feel a little bit like tedious and like similar to each other, so I was starting to get bored a little bit in the middle of this story, I'm not gonna lie. But then the ending was so good. I think a great example of like the kind of comedy that's in this book, because like it really is stupid comedy, like it's dumb comedy, but it's so funny and it really works for me. One example of this is when the announcer comes over the speaker and he's like, new achievement, because like anytime this character like Carl, anytime he achieves something new in the game, it'll come over, like the speaker announcer person will come over and say new achievement, and like this is what it is, and this is the reward you've received for like getting this achievement. So this one says, new achievement, you have found a stairwell next to the floor. What does this say about you? Reward, this barely qualifies as an achievement. Your reward is that you're alive to read this. That's so funny. And I think the audiobook is definitely the way to go with this book, because the audiobook narrator is so funny with the way that he like delivers these lines. Like like he does it so deadpan, and it's so funny. And I also love when he like screams as Carl in the book when he's like, "God damn it, donut!" It's just so funny the way that this narrator decided to narrate this story. Like I feel like he has so much charisma and it really adds to the experience. There was even some things at the very end that I was like, wait, what? Like I can see that they're gonna be setting up the next book to be so much fun, and I actually can't wait to read the next book in the series. I'm just so impressed. Like I really wasn't sure if this book was gonna be my thing, and I'm so glad that I ended up loving it as much as I did, and I definitely do want to continue on in the series, which I'm so glad that I do because I actually do have books 2 and 3, and I think I'm gonna have to try to get my hands on the audiobooks for those as well because like the audiobooks are just so good. I don't think I would feel the same about this book if I had just read it physically. I feel like the audiobooks are what make it so much fun for me. I'm so glad that I liked this one because that means that I have so many books in this series to look forward to, and that makes me so happy. Whoa, it has been like 2 days since I finished Dungeon Crawler Carl, but I've decided to read Our Infinite Fates next for this video. So I was able to get this ebook checked out from my library on my Kindle, so I've been reading it on my Kindle. I've also been listening to this one on audio because I was able to get the audiobook from the publishers, and this book has been really interesting so far. I wanted to update you because I just hit page 101, and you know, with this book kind of being described as like comparable to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I can definitely see the comparison. I feel like this book kind of feels like a young adult version of Addie LaRue so far, which is a very high compliment coming from me, but I'm really liking this story so far, and like the fantasy elements of this book don't feel like too strong to the point where it's like going over my head. We're following this protagonist named Evelyn, and there's this guy named Arden. They've lived many lives, and like in every life when they meet each other, they are destined to like fall in love with each other, but then they also have to kill each other. And from what I understand, it's like every time before they reach the age of 18, which like their birthdays are on the same day, I'm pretty sure. So before they turn 18, they have to kill each other to escape some kind of like doom. I don't know. Like we don't really know why it's happening. Arden is the only one who actually knows what's going on. Like our protagonist doesn't know why they have to kill each other every time, but I'm guessing it's to like escape some kind of curse or something like that. I don't know. And so what I like about this book is that right at the beginning, we get a prologue that's taking place like hundreds of years ago. And then the first chapter takes place in 2004. And then our present timeline is taking place in 2022. But I like that in between the chapters of 2022, we do get flashbacks to like the 1960s, the 1930s, like all these different times that they've lived, you know, until we get to see flashbacks of like their lives together and how they fall in love in every single timeline and then they have to kill each other. But now in the timeline of 2022, which is like our present timeline, our main character Evelyn, like she wants to stay in this timeline because she's like really close to her sister Gracie, and her sister Gracie is sick and she actually needs Evelyn's blood or her like stem cells in order to like keep her alive. And so in this particular timeline, she really doesn't want to get killed, and so she's trying to figure out like where Arden is, because it's kind of interesting because Arden doesn't even appear in her life until it's like nearing her 18th birthday. So sometimes it'll be like when she's around 16 years old, sometimes it'll be around 17 years old, and sometimes it'll be like just before her 18th birthday when he appears in her life. And so she's trying to like look for signs of him. And what's really cool and really interesting to me is that he doesn't always appear in her life in like the same body. And like sometimes he even appears in her life in like the body of a female, and then we have a cute little sapphic thing happening between them. So Arden is not always in a male body, but he's usually in a male body from what I've read so far. But I like that, you know, in this universe, she's trying everything she can to like stay alive, mostly for her sister, because she wants to stay alive for her sister, but also like she's been begging him to like have them not kill each other for like the last few times that this has happened. And we saw in one of the recent flashbacks that we read that he's starting to waver and being like, okay, maybe like there is a chance that we could live like a long and normal life together and we can grow old together, but you don't exactly know why. So it's like, it's kind of a mystery trying to figure out like why they even need to kill each other like this to begin with. I mean, I'm guessing it's like some kind of curse or something like that, but I am really loving the writing in this book. Like, God, the writing is just so stunning. Just an example of some of the writing in this book is when she said, trying to keep the people I loved alive was like trying to cup the rain in my palms, every drop so precious and fragile and important only to watch them seep inevitably back into the earth. God, that is some beautiful writing right there. And I love how she describes loving him and like loving someone who's like lived through so much. When she said, what fascinated me, what compelled me so profoundly was that theirs was a soul in the truest sense. Their emotional contours shifting with culture and history and experience, but never yielding entirely entirely. And how like, yeah, when you live that long, like as long as they have, and you keep, you know, experiencing different cultures and different things throughout your life. I love how she said, how could anyone who'd only lived one life ever compare? I just think that's kind of beautiful, you know, like I am liking this romance between them. I think the romance is written very well, which like I was worried because I was like, oh my god, is it gonna feel like insta love? Because I'm like, they're meeting each other, you know, very briefly in their lives for only a short period of time before they like fall in love and have to kill each other. But it's also like they have all this history, you know, because like she remembers all of their history together. And so it doesn't really feel like insta love because it feels like they've known each other for like centuries at this point, you know? So I am liking the vibes of this one a lot. It does feel comparable to Addie LaRue. Like, I don't know, I'm really liking it. The writing is gorgeous. But like, this is going very well. Like, I don't know if I just picked books for this video very well, or like maybe I'm getting more into fantasy now than I thought I was in the past. I mean, to be fair, the fantasy in this book does feel very light. Like, it feels a lot more focused on like, you know, the family dynamics, and like the romance feels like it's a big part of this. So maybe I'm liking this more because I do like the romantic feeling of the writing, and I like the way that it's written, and it doesn't feel too fantasy, but like, wow, I'm just so surprised with how well this vlog is going. Like, I could not have anticipated that I would like so many of these books. But anyway, it's about 12:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday. I think I'm going to continue reading some more of this today. My sister is going to be coming over probably in like the next hour, and we're going to be having dinner together tonight as a family. So I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to read today, but tomorrow is a Sunday, and like I don't have anything going on tomorrow other than like maybe trying to go out. Like, I might go out to a coffee shop or something and then try to finish up the rest of this book.
I write to you in poetry with words left on the shelf, full of dust. You'll know it's me and from nobody else. Grab your seat at the fantasy parade. What I see is all inside my
Hello, hi, it is now the next day, and I was able to finish reading Our Infinite Fates. I did end up going to the coffee shop this morning, which was very nice, and it's a Sunday today, so like there was nobody in there, and I was able to read the rest of Our Infinite Fates, and I am so happy to tell you that I really enjoyed this book. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. Gosh, there was so much happening at the end of this book. It was like overwhelming. And I know I mentioned this like earlier in this vlog, but I feel like the plot twist towards the end of this book, like I don't feel like this is something that I could have predicted. And you know, that definitely could be because of my lack of like familiarity with the fantasy genre, and like these authors are just coming up with twists that I personally would have never seen coming, or like I could have never predicted that on my own. But like, god, I loved the twist at the end. And by the twist, I just mean like when you finally get to the reveal of like why these characters have to kill each other every time before they turn 18. Like, I thought that was so interesting, and it was so well done. And I thought maybe it would be something that would be like hard for me to understand, but it was actually written in a way that was like really easy to understand, and I felt so connected to these characters and their story. And like, god, the writing in this book just in general was like absolutely stunning, like really gorgeous writing. Some of my favorite quotes, one of them said, "Pain so absolute, it was the darkest pitch of night, like a black hole in the universe." I also love this other quote when they were talking about how never is like such a long time for them, because you know these characters live for like thousands of years, when they said it was the astonishing weight of never, so devastatingly absolute, so impenetrably permanent. I also thought it was like so unique and so interesting because I know I mentioned in the first update how Arden's character would sometime appear as a boy and then sometimes would appear as a girl, and I love the commentary in this book about gender and how even our protagonist Evelyn, how she like doesn't really feel attached to a certain gender, and I didn't realize that even she will pop up in different universes, sometimes as a girl, sometimes as a boy. And so it was really interesting actually to get these like flashback chapters in between the chapters in the present day, where like you get to learn more about their story over the years, and how like in some timelines both of them were girls, and then in other timelines both of them were boys. And I loved, you know, the whole romance of the story, because I love how their romance existed like outside of gender, you know, like it was just like their souls were connected to each other, and I just think that was so beautiful and so well explored. I love how our protagonist says, I don't feel in my heart that I'm a boy, but neither do I feel like I'm inherently a girl. My soul isn't rooted to any of them. I'm just me. No particular body feels more right than the other, no more wrong. They're just vessels. And I like how our character would talk about the difference between existing in a male body versus a female body. And I just loved and adored the way that the romance was written in this book. Like, I loved how Arden was such a big fan of writing poetry, and the way that Arden's character would talk about writing poetry throughout the centuries. Oh, it was just so beautifully done. The last chapter of this book was like absolutely chef's kiss, 5 out of 5 stars. That last chapter was so beautiful. It gave me goosebumps all over my body. And so you're probably wondering why I'm not giving this 5 stars. And I feel like the only reason what's holding me back from rating this book a little bit higher is because it does feel a little bit long in the pacing at some points. Because, you know, this book is about like 360 pages on my e-reader. Somewhere around like the 200-ish page mark, I was starting to feel like, okay, like I'm ready for the story to pick up, because it does start to get a little bit repetitive for me, at least in the way that like our protagonist Evelyn, she keeps questioning like, why do we have to do this? Why can't I just live my life? Like, I want to make it to the age of 18 and I want to live like a normal life. And then it also does start to get repetitive in the way that we start to get flashback chapters of, you know, these characters in many different timelines. And some of the timelines, don't get me wrong, some of them I was obsessed with, and I actually wanted them to be like longer and like more explored, and I could read a whole book about that timeline, you know what I mean? But then some of the timelines, I'm not gonna lie, like it was starting to get a little bit boring at times, especially the ones that were like way back. I still, like, I have to give this book 4 stars because of how much fun I had with the story, and I really liked the way that the romance was written in this book. Oh my god, it was so good. They were so beautiful together. Like, I really liked the romance. And I do think the fantasy elements of this book are definitely comparable to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Like, I think that is such an accurate comparison for this book. Like, you could have fooled me if you told me this book was written by V.E. Schwab. I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense, because it does feel like something V.E. Schwab would have written. Wow, oh my gosh, that is a wrap on this reading vlog. I am so glad that I decided to try to read some fantasy books that are a little bit outside of my comfort zone this week, because clearly it ended up going very well. I mean, the fact that all 3 of these books I gave 4 stars across the board, that is pretty crazy, because I feel like the last time I tried to do a vlog like this where I was reading fantasy books, it just did not go very well for me, and that's why it's taken me so long to want to do this kind of video again. But because this vlog ended up going so well, I'm thinking maybe the next time I do this will have to be much sooner than later. So maybe I'll have to do this again in like a month or 2, and you can let me know which fantasy books you think that I should try based off of, you know, these results, based off of what I tend to like in fantasy, I guess. I do think that I prefer fantasy books that have like a heavy romance storyline, because, you know, since I am such a big romance reader, I think that makes sense that my taste would cross over the most there. And because I do get invested in a story because of a good romance. But, you know, I also was surprised by like Dungeon Crawler Carl, because that book has literally no romance in it, but it's just a fun and silly, goofy time. Like, that's definitely one of the most original and like unique books that I've ever read. But like, who knows, but I'm having a really fun time exploring things like this in the fantasy genre. I think the next time that I make a vlog like this reading fantasy books, I definitely want to include The Will of the Many, just because that one is one that I am so curious about. I'm just so curious to see if that would be my kind of thing or not. And I just have major FOMO with that book in general. Like, I just really want to know what the hype's all about. But yeah, anyways, please let me know your thoughts on any of these fantasy books if you've read them. And as always, if you have any recommendations for me for things you think I might like, then please leave them down below. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!